Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Nice you joined this tech talk. My name is Nina van Toulon. I'm representing International Waste Platform. And this tech talk is about recyclability verification and standardization of recycling information on packaging. We decided to record this tech talk and follow it by a Zoom for people who are interested to learn more about it or ask questions afterwards. So after we publish this recording, we will also send an invitation out for a Zoom discussion. Up to Anthony.
I'm next.
Yeah.
And then I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today for this this tech talk. So thanks very much for the invitation. Yeah, my name is Anthony Peyton. We're an organisation called Prep Design, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this program. I've been working hard on this this software called Prep, which I'll explain later on. But I'm also going to sort of take you through some of my thoughts about a lot of different quality standards around the world, and also on-pack labelling schemes around the world. So I'll give you a bit of a summary of that. But anyway, I think I might leave it back to you, Nina, to kick off the discussion, and then I'll join in later on. How's that sound?
Great, thanks. So can you put on the first slide?
Let me just click on the button. There we go.
Yeah. So a bit of history. So in 2017, we started looking at the recycling information on packaging. And we found out that there's no international standard adopted for this. And also the recyclability of packaging is actually not regulated. We started looking at what is on packaging, and what we find a lot are the resin identification codes, and actually these are not meant for the public. They confuse, and people don't know what to do with it. And then there is the number 7 for the plastic types, and actually in number 7, it can be, I don't know how many combinations or different types of plastic. So it doesn't mean much for the public. And then we also see often on packaging the hand in basket pictogram. It's also not adequate. It doesn't explain in which waste stream you have to put it. And actually there are in many places no bins and no collection systems. Besides that, we found that the recycling information on packaging is really small. Often you cannot find it. It's not readable. You need binoculars to see it. The size and the position is not standardized. And it's confusing for the consumer. We also see packaging which has zero information about recycling or collection. So, and then we also focus on definitions. We see a lot of unclear information regarding claims and greenwashing, for example, eco-friendly, compostable, but it doesn't say under which conditions. Is it compostable in your garden, or does it need to go to an industrial composting facility? And is that compostability verifiable? And then we see bio-based plastics. We see so many comments on internet about people questioning what is it and what is the composition. Is it plastic or is it not plastic because of the word bio? And then you have this issue about recycled content. How much content of recyclates in the packaging? Is it verifiable? And then we see, what is it, terms like ocean-bound plastics. It's just a fashionable term because the packaging is not ocean-bound. I mean, it's going to the ocean, but you can't use it as a greenwashing claim. And 2 days or 3 days ago, I saw a claim from a company mentioning that their packaging had zero impact, which of course is not possible because any packaging has impact. So this is what we've been looking at.
It seems that seems, Nina, that with this confusion with all these different labels, that surely must have contributed to the low recovery rate for all this packaging that's put out.
Yeah, that's clear. That's clear. And in the next slides, maybe you can move to the next slide. It shows this very clear. Yeah, this is a compilation of the packaging we reviewed from 21 countries, sent in by our network partners at International Waste Platform. And you can see it's a sort of total mix of unclear messaging. And of course, it doesn't contribute to people segregating their waste well, because the messaging is not clear and not coherent, and often also missing.
What do you think of the term wish cycling?
Yeah, well, wish cycling is, I'm all pro recycling, and wish cycling you can apply to locations where there is no recycling, mechanical recycling available within reach. So actually, people wish to do the good thing, but if they don't have the good information or the collection system is not in place, then it stays wishing for it to be recycled. And also wish cycling is, can also refer to the wish to do it, but the packaging itself is not recyclable.
Yeah, and it causes contamination.
Yeah, so you can explain wish cycling in many ways. But so on this slide you see a number of, well, we all know it, you can look in your own kitchen and look at your own packaging, and you can explore the information, and then anybody can see it's not clear. And we are not here to put the finger to any particular company, so I won't. But the other day I had a yeah, no point. But the other day I had a soup packaging of a really big company, internationally famous, and selling their products across the world, and it had zero information, nothing. So it would be really good to move towards change. So the next slide is also interesting. What we found when we looked at this packaging information in 21 countries, we saw the European green dots in products on the packaging in Asia and Africa, in Philippines, Indonesia, Cambodia, Malaysia, Cameroon, Nigeria. And this actually has zero meaning in those countries, because these countries are not included in the European Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive. So if you are a consumer in Cambodia and you see this, it doesn't mean anything.
That's right.
And so we actually saw this quite a lot. And it also, actually hardly any piece of packaging we reviewed has any clear information. And also we see mixed materials on the packaging, in packaging, and often you only see one material identification symbol on it, whereas it might be, a Tetra Pak, sorry for the name, but anyway, everybody knows them, which could have a plastic cap and a carton box, and then an inner layer of plastic. And it could even have, some of these drink packs have an aluminium, tamper-proof seal inside. Yeah. So in a mixed material packaging, we haven't seen often more than one material description.
Okay. So there's a bit of guessing going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, it's confusing because me too, when I'm here in my kitchen and I have a packaging which consists of several materials, I also wonder, you know. And then, what we think is really important is that the recyclability properties in one country are totally different in another. You will be speaking about that. So if I have a packaging here which can be 100% recycled, I'm now in the Netherlands, not in Indonesia, but if it can be 100% recycled here, that doesn't mean that it will be 100% recycled in another country which has no waste infrastructure. So basically, in my country, it should mention 100% recyclable. And in another country, that same packaging should be labeled as not recyclable. So you will be talking about this, about the need for the criterion of location, where does the
That's very
packaging,
important. Yeah.
super important because it's just not a reality in, And then, I saw some exceptions. Our network partner in Norway, Holt Norge Rent, they sent us information. They are more advanced. They have now a very clear label on the pack and compatible to the bin label in their country. And so you see the label on your pack, and then you know in which bin, because the bin has the same label.
Okay. Good.
That's really good and clear. The only thing I wonder, or actually I think this is true, it's not yet gone through a verification tool, their packaging there. So that's it. And I know you are already having, worked with brand owners in Australia and in some other countries. So those are exceptions too, where we saw the prep labels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So
hang on, there's one there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, this one. Yeah. So this is, I think, the future on pack labels for reusable and refillable packaging. In the concept of circular economy, system design, the change of system design towards alternative delivery models, refilling and reuse of packaging is all in the pipeline. And I think this is the future, that we will also be seeing packaging which is labeled, I just designed these are not from a system.
You've done a good
This
job
is
there,
sorry?
You've done a good job there.
No, I'm an amateur. So this is the green circle is the symbol I found for reusable on the internet. And then you can expect refillable packaging and reusable packaging labeled in a similar style. And it would be good that will also be internationally adopted, the standardized label. Yeah.
Because it might be also that in that you could extend it a little bit further, and you could have, for instance, the word bottle at the top is refillable, and then the spray pack is reusable.
Yeah, for example. Yeah, that's it. That's the future. I mean, my hope, and I think that's clear that this will happen, because we can't continue. We have to reduce single use. So refillable and reusable will grow. And it needs the commitment from the brand owners to change their systems for refilling. Yeah, okay. There are so many products suitable for refilling, and of course, you have to be realistic. We need packaging for a number of products for what is it, health secure, health and to prevent waste, food waste and food rot.
Yeah, there's been so many refill schemes come in the last 12 months, hasn't there? 2 years with the Loop program and some of the in-store refills. It's a fantastic trend happening here.
Yeah, that's it. And we see it in Indonesia also with the great startup Cyclus, for example, still mainly focused on Jakarta, but expanding.
And what sort of products is it refilling for?
Mostly detergent and personal hygiene, and can also be cooking oil, for example, but also shampoos and wash what is it, cleaners and so on.
So to move away from those sachets, which are obviously a problem for litter and so on, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Neen. That's a really good introduction to this tech talk. You're covering some good ground there. Would you like me to run through some slides now?
Yeah, please do, because you have a great presentation coming on. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, what I've done for starters, I've done a bit of it's not a complete exhaustive list of under the heading packaging assessment standards, but it's really just over my experience over the years, coming to meet some really passionate people right across the world in terms of trying to help brands to design more recyclable packaging. And there's a few listed there that some of the people watching this presentation might be interested in researching, because there's a lot of information out there. And as you were saying before, Nina, that it really depends on the nation, that there could be variations between different nations in terms of what's acceptable in the ecosystem. And a lot of these, I suppose, in a European, US, Australia, that's those countries that have got maybe more formalized recycling systems in place that can accept these materials. But still, the principles are much the same, regardless of which nation you're selling into, because collection is key, as you mentioned, but it's the downstream reprocessors that are ones that often determine recyclability. So for instance, the paper mill, what can they accept, or the plastic recycler. So even though a country might be focusing on its collection, it still needs to be considering the downstream reprocessors, and that's what a lot of these guides look at. So in the US, Association of Plastic Recyclers, they've got designs. The RecyClass tool in Europe is very well known for plastics. And they've also got a certification program as well for independent certification of a recyclability assessment. And that's similarly also happening in the UK with Recoup. Now, RAP's been involved with the UK Plastics Pact and also setting up plastics pacts around the world. So they're right across this topic and have done some great work providing guidance for brand owners. And others there are looking at individual nations as well in Europe. The Eurofins, I read about that one. The KIDV in Netherlands do a fantastic job at a real academic level to look at the real evidence-based assessment of recyclability. And FUS Plus in Belgium I've met with them, and they've got some really good, like a clearinghouse of guidelines, so you can go onto a website and you can see all these different guides for different materials. And I've also met the group Design for Earth in South Africa, who have also come up with an excellent recyclability assessment tool for the South African market. And I've just put a note there about the Italian method, because focusing on paper products and looking at a lab test or a framework for assessing the recyclability of paper products called Artichoka to that program. So there's quite a, as you can see there's some are plastic, some are paper, some do all materials. There's a new one out of Canada as well. The Packaging Association of Canada, PAC, have got a new assessment tool that looks at recyclability, reusability, and compostability. So it'd be interesting to look at that one as well.
And Anthony, yep. So the organizations in this list, are you on a platform to discuss harmonization?
Well, look, I've met a lot of the people in these organisations through my travels over the last few years, and we're all trying to help the brands to be as accurate as possible. Harmonisation, I think that's an excellent objective, and I think also the distinction between harmonisation and consistency, they're different things. I think at a base level you can try and harmonise things, but then the nuances will come into play in terms of different ecosystems. Therefore, they won't always be consistent. So I reckon there is, from what I've seen, there is quite a lot of harmonisation occurring in each different part of the world, and that will be of benefit in the long term to the big companies that are global in terms of selling products everywhere, because they're actually developing their own internal standards. So they'll, for instance, have, like for instance, a Nestle or Unilever or Mars, they'll have their own internal framework, which grabs all the main harmonised bits from across the world to put into their own design processes. So it is certainly happening, because it makes a big difference over time.
Yeah.
Now, this one here is the a slide looking at now the on-pack recycling labels. OPRL was set up this scheme called the on-pack recycling label scheme for the UK market. There was the first one that was set up looking at individual components, like the bottle and the cap had their own component, their symbol. That was set up by RAP in about 2009. And then in about 2012, the Sustainable Packaging Coalition in the US set up a program called How to Recycle. So you can see there the on-pack symbols for that scheme for North America. In Woolworths, I think were next. They were about 2013 in South Africa, and they launched their on-pack recycling label program. And you can see there, they've also got a comment there about the recycled content and also the FSC certification for the paper products. So that was an extension going beyond just recyclability. Now, 2015 was when the French came up with the tree man, but it's been expanded, and they've got this iconography. You can see there a little bag and a bin. So there's little pictures for each to sort of tell the consumers which receptacle it should go into. So that's been the last, I suppose, 11 years of development of these on-pack recycling labels in different nations. Now, last year, there was a global report done by Consumers International and UNEP, and you would have seen this report, Nina, which looks at title, Can I Recycle This? And they went through and looked at all the on-pack label schemes around the world to see, basically rate them from the point of view of clarity and other sort of measures of performance. And the one that I'm most familiar with from being here in Australia is the Australasian Recycling Label, and we were very pleased. So there's the group called APCO, the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation, and Planet Arc. They run the program, host the program in Australia, and so it's and my organisation's been involved as a partnership with those two. So it's been great to see that we got 3 positive results in that report for clarity, accessibility, and reliability. So that was really, I suppose, an excellent endorsement of the work we've been working on over the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So on to the one that I'm most familiar with, and I suppose for the chance to explain what we've been doing here in the work that I've been doing over the last 15 years. It's really started in 2006, 2007, where I started working on this. So it's been a long journey to get to this point. But we've got now the PREP is a piece of software, which I'll explain shortly. And then the PREP label is really just the results that come out of the software. But in Australia, it's called the Australasian Recycling Label. But it's also now the label that's being used in the Singapore market as well. Now, over the last few years, we've assessed about 60,000 items of packaging through the PREP. And so it's really become a standard for Australia and New Zealand, and with about 500 companies volunteering to join the program. Now, I mentioned Singapore, so there's a group called Label for Recycling, and they're the host of the program in Singapore. And also we have a version of PREP in the UK, which is hosted by OPRL, who I mentioned before was the first organisation to have the on-pack recycling labelling for consumers. So the PREP, it's a bit of a black box. People can say, well, what is it? Well, I'll start by explaining it this way, that what we're looking at is a tool that simulates what happens to packaging once it's been disposed at the point of collection. Now, we've already spoken before, Nina, about how some nations may not have a great collection system, but there will still be some informal waste collectors system, or there'll be still some sort of collection going on. So The question then is, where does that go? It might be in a truck, so it might be crushed, or it could be in some sort of a transportation to a sorting facility. Now, in some nations, those sorting facilities are sometimes called MRFs, or materials recovery facilities, and a lot of them are automated. But there's also a lot of sorting facilities that are manual based. So it could be conveyor belts where you're actually picking off plastics and glass and metals, and you're doing a separation in a more manual way. But in either case, the materials that you sort are going to go somewhere. So the plastics will go to a plastic reprocessor, the paper will go to a paper mill, the metals will go to smelters, and the glass will be recovered and beneficiated in some way before all of those materials become new products, which basically means there's a market, there's a pull for the materials coming through. Now, if the brand owners are designing packaging to be recyclable for the market they're selling into, that means the end market is very well placed to do something a second time around with those materials because it's a cleaner stream and it suits that recovery system. So that's an important point about why I suppose the value of what we're doing here is to try and get the brands to create packaging that suits the market they're selling into. Now, in the past with recyclability, it's historically been that a local authority might say, these are the items that are acceptable in our bin. And it might be we accept bottles and we accept cartons and we accept glass jars and steel cans. Now that description is very much in the format of the packaging. Whereas in the PrEP classification, we don't look at it from the point of view of the format. Like for instance, you might have two trays. One might be recyclable and one might be not recyclable. So what we look at with the tray is, what is it made from? What's attached to it? What is its size and shape? How much is attached? It's the parameters and thresholds we're looking at for each piece of packaging, not the format. So an example is, how small is too small for a certain marketplace where they've got an automatic screen taking out small pieces and glass fragments? Well, the threshold for that market might be 50 millimeters in 3 dimensions. So it's sort of, you can see like a proxy test. It's sort of saying that if you put that in the marketplace, even though it might be collected, when it goes to the sorting facility, the plastic cap might end up in the glass stream and then it gets rejected as waste later on. So it's really just extending the life of it, but only for one more step, because then it becomes waste after that anyway. So what we consider is the level of acceptance at curbside. Now I've got the US spelling there for curbside. In Australia, we spell it KERBSIDE. So we're not even harmonizing in language here, Nina. We have different spelling. That's what we all know what we're talking about. We're talking about some collection. It could be a bottle bank, like a bring-to station. It could be a council-run depot. It could be at curbside for the household. It doesn't really matter. If there's a collection system in place, we allow for that. Is there a market for the material? If you're going to recover the material, is there somewhere for it to go?
Yeah.
And the way we build this, I mentioned this term proxy tests. So a proxy test means that in the algorithms of the software, we're not requiring anybody to go off and do lab tests or sortability trials, because it's all been simulated already in the tool. So it means we can streamline the assessment and design process to make more recyclable packaging at speed. That's what we're trying to do. It's no use waiting until 2025 or 2030 to get this right. We want to get it done in 2022, 2021, and by last year, preferably.
Yeah, I'll just interrupt you. After this presentation, you'll continue with demonstrating the tool. Then people can see what you're talking about, the details.
That's right, Nina. That's the thing. These slides, people are thinking, well, what is this PrEP? Okay, I'll finish the slides and then I'll show you exactly what it is.
Yeah.
A couple more slides to finish off. When it comes to defining recyclability, there's a few groups around the world will determine a classification methodology. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has got an excellent sort of program of defining recyclability, and through the Plastics Pact that are around the world, what we look at is the ISO 14021 standard, international standard for self-declared environmental claims. Now in that standard, there's a definition of recyclability, which looks at the 3 main measures. Is there a collection system? Will it sort positively and not cause any problems to other materials? And is there a market for the recovered materials? And so our software tool called the PREP allows for those three main measures.
Yeah, can we go back to that slide, to the self-declared environmental claims?
Yep.
We discussed this before about governance. So I know that there is a board, a PREP has a board reviewing the system. But if it's self-declared, it's still voluntary.
Yeah, well,
And you have to what is it? Rely on the information the package, the brand owner or the packaging company puts in. So we discussed this before about governance because there are not yet NGOs in that board, and we discussed. You mentioned also even the public could get engaged.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so I'll be explaining in a couple of slides the technical advisory committees that you're referring to. And we do have representation from across the supply chain. And really that's there to confirm the settings for the PREP for that particular nation. So there's a TAC in the UK and there's a TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee for Australia and New Zealand. And you're right. So having a broader representation over time, it'd certainly be a good thing. The question is what role they'll be playing, because we're looking for the settings determine, I suppose, the thresholds. Yeah. But as you were saying a minute ago, it still requires the brand owner to accurately put in the specifications of the packaging such that it's being assessed accurately. Because if they're playing funny games on the input side, we can't be expected to know exactly what the result is or be responsible for the result. However, we are responsible if they put the accurate information in, because the settings, that's the difference.
Yeah, understandable. But, you know, we know that this plastic tax, for example, will be introduced in Europe.
Yep.
And so brand owners or producers, of course, want to have their packaging recyclable. I mean, if it's labeled as recyclable, it could happen that if it's self-declared, that it's not valid, and the packaging would have the label 100% recyclable, and possibly
and it may not be.
Yeah.
And that's why the governance program is really, the committee is just one part of the governance program, because you also then need an audit program behind that. And so in Australia, the APCO will do it. And also in the UK, there's an audit program where the auditors will go out to a sample of the companies that are using the system to ensure they've got, not just checking every SKU that put on the marketplace, it's more so checking the processes that are happening internally to say, have they got the right evidence they need? Are the people appropriately trained to use the system? Is the information going through certain gateways and being approved at a certain level? So it's a process review to build the confidence that that company over time will have accurate results coming on the on-pack symbols for the consumers.
Yeah, and you do a random, what is it?
Yeah, the random audit, about 10% of the user companies each year will be audited.
Yeah.
But that could be any number. It's really depending on, and then that comes back to then and they can also then have, you mentioned the consumers, so that the consumers, for instance, are looking at a on-pack label and they don't think it's right, there should be some sort of a clearinghouse where they can then take a photograph, for instance, and automatically send it to the administrator and say, I've got a problem here, or put it on Facebook or whatever they're going to do with it. But we're trying to educate the consumers as well as trying to educate the brand owners who are designing packaging. They both need education. So the PREP is there to educate the brand owners and the packaging manufacturers, and the label is there to educate the consumers. They both have to work hand in hand.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
That's okay. So with the results of the PREP, when you get a recyclability result, rather than being a binary result or yes or no, it's actually a trinary result. So it's either recyclable with lost value, or not recyclable. Now that middle one there is to say to the brand owner, it's not as good as it could be, but we'll allow you to call it recyclable for now, but keeping in mind that the thresholds that determine recyclable with lost value can be tightened over time. And so you're basically taking brand owners on a journey. Now, I said before, I think I might have said before, about we're trying to create a balance here between the needs of the packaging industry and the needs of the recyclers. Because a brand owner won't just put a plastic laminate on a paper bag for the sake of wasting plastic. They're doing it for shelf preservation or stopping food waste, or they're doing it for functional reasons. But it might be a problem to the recycler. So then the pressure's on the brand owner then to come up with a new way of putting a coating on that still achieves the same functional outcomes, but it's better for the recycler. So it's a continual journey between the recyclers and the packaging industry coming together more so to talk about what their respective needs are.
Clear. My dog.
Hope your dog's enjoying the presentation.
Yeah, she's very interested. Now she's falling asleep again.
Well, we better start telling a few more jokes or something to wake her up. But we've got this slide here. I found it at the Viridor website, but it's sometimes hard to find nice photos of smiling faces in the recycling industry, because it's such a tough thing sometimes to get the recyclers to have clean materials and to making a good dollar, and they've got the export bans, and there's always problems. So if we can get this right and design packaging to suit the market it's being sold in terms of the ecosystem, these people will be smiling. And that's a key outcome of this whole program. Now, we mentioned the governance. So I spoke about the committees in different groups. So the committees will validate the settings to make sure they're accurate for the market. They'll approve changes because, of course, the market changes over time. And so if markets change, either what's acceptable at curbside, or what the technology is able to accommodate, or whether the market's open or closed, we can change those settings. And then we also respond to users. So a user might get a result they're not happy with. They thought their packaging was recyclable, and they send in an appeal with some evidence to say, we don't agree. And therefore, there's a process there of appealing and response that will be either directly applicable to them, or it might be applicable to all users. So therefore, you change the settings accordingly. Mm. So that's the slides. So I'm sure your dog will be very happy the slides are over. And so what I'll do now is I'll just show a quick example of how to use the prep. So I started this example earlier, and this is just a meat tray. And I gave the example before about some meat trays are easy to recycle, other meat trays are problematic because they might have laminates on them.
Yeah, can I interrupt you? So just to explain, a brand owner logs in your system, registers.
Yeah. So in this case, the host organisation like APCO in Australia, or OPRL in the UK, or Label for Recycling in Singapore, by being a member of those host organisations, then they have access to use the tool. And then they're then sent a login. And so their organisation will have a list of projects, like this list of projects I showed you here. Each person in that organisation will see each other's, so this is all projects for the whole organisation. And one of the things about clustering it in an organisation is when we get to this dashboard, which I can show you now, this would, like if you've got a target, for instance, to have all packaging recyclable by say 2025, this is your scoreboard. This is how you're going. And you can sort of see what percentage of your SKU range is recyclable. And if you've got business managers who are focusing on certain categories, then in here you can say, well, how are we going with fruit and veg? Yeah. So there's a certain result there. Or somebody else is looking after beverages. And so that allows you to sort of have those insights to provide feedback to the packaging designers to say, well, we're having a bit of problem here in this area. Yeah. Let's have a bit of an action plan to try and improve that over time. Then you can track your progress against your 2025 target.
Yeah. Wow. I hadn't seen this functionality yet. Yeah.
Yeah. I try and hold back a few gems just for people like you, Nina, so we can get a few surprises. Yeah, there's a fair bit in this, and it looks quite simple on the face of it, but it's what's under the hood that makes it complex. And so I'm trying to take the complexity out of the whole system and make it simple for the users. That's what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
So in this case, we may have, say, for instance, a plastic tray. So we pick the tray and that'll be coming on the labeling scheme for the consumer. And there might also be a film that's on top of the tray. The next page will take us to defining the specifications. So a series of questions will come up. So we'll say, what's the material made from? Can you see that list there? We've got all the different materials. All right, so different types of PET will be problematic. So if you've got a PET bottle and there's no labels and it's all clean, recyclable. I think we all know that one.
Yeah.
Transparent coloured will be recycled with lost value. It's not as valuable as clear plastic. And I think it was seen that the 7-Up soft drink brand has recently gone from I think it might have been a coloured to a clear to make it more recyclable.
Yeah, I think green, from green to clear. Yeah,
that's right. So in our system, coloured transparent comes up as recycled with lost value, that middle classification, whereas opaque PET is problematic to recyclers, and therefore that comes up as not recyclable. So if we pick PET initially, and the weight of it, and we say it's a rigid container, we then put the dimensions in, and then down here there's questions about inks and secondary materials. Now, a secondary material is something that is attached to it, but it won't be removed by the consumer. So it might be a label on a bottle, or it might be a liner on a tray, or it might be some sort of a laminate over a cardboard box that's attached to the. So we're interested now whether that's going to be a problem or not. Yeah. So let's say the secondary material in this case is an LDPE liner, and the bonding type is important here because depending on when the packaging is recovered at the end of life, if it's, for instance, threaded connection and the tray was then granulated into little pieces, the threaded part would just come off and the tray would come here. So really, that won't be a problem because one might float and one might sink.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one is laminated. Now we've got two plastics stuck together, and when they're granulated, they're still stuck together. They're not going to come apart.
No.
All right. Now, here we put in the percentage, the weight. So this is saying that the liner is 2% of the overall weight of the tray, and it covers 50% of the surface area. Now, in a developed market where you've got an automated system and you're using near-infrared cameras to scan the container, for instance, if it's covered by this secondary material, that's all it will see. It won't see the underlying polymer.
Yeah.
Right? So that determines then the path of that tray at the sorting facility, if it's an automated facility. Now, as I said before, all of this can be modified. We can turn questions on and off to suit the market. Now, this is a soft plastic. So here we're saying we've got a soft plastic with two laminates, an LDP, which is 100 grams per square meter, attached to a PET 50 grams per square meter. So keeping in mind when we're looking at this, we're looking at one, are these materials compatible? And secondly, is there too much of the secondary material on it? Because up to some point it might be okay, but beyond that point, it really causes problems to recyclers. Mm-hmm. All right, so we've put the specifications in for the tray, which has got a liner. And we've also put the specifications in for the film that's got two laminates joined together. You then go to the report, and it says that those items are not recyclable in the market that we're selling into. But importantly, it gives us feedback. So down here for the tray, it says polymers will not separate, and therefore they can't be recycled. And for the film, it's saying that soft plastic is not collected at curbside, or it might be that the thresholds are inappropriate. And you can come up in here, you might have then a soft plastics guide. And we've got this, we allow for the specific gravity to do these calculations. And the settings then for the host, they're all in here. So for instance, if you're talking about the C-Flex guidelines, you would go into this matrix here and you would modify the settings to suit the C-Flex guidelines. Whereas another market, you may accept a little bit of laminate. So it really depends on what the ecosystem is that's taking those materials.
Yeah, can I ask something? So suppose, because within countries for example, in Asia, several countries
Yep.
And there might be a developed waste infrastructure collection system and mechanical recycling factories reasonable distance. But for example, in remote Indonesia or remote Malaysia or other countries, the situation is different. So in the future, would this system allow these differentiations? Because, for example, what would be recyclable in Kuala Lumpur might not be recyclable somewhere, you know, in remote Malaysia, or Jakarta versus Maluku, or, you know.
I'm totally with your question, Nina. So what I'm going to do is just quickly log into the Australian version of the software because I was showing the pilot version. I'll just quickly log in here because in this one environment of the software, it covers both Australia and New Zealand. So when we're doing an assessment for in this software, what we do in the first instance when you're doing a project, let's just open one here. I'm jumping around a bit, but that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's clear.
So let's just open this example here. So when it says which market do you sell the product into? Australia and New Zealand. All right, so you've got two markets. So if you go to the settings then for the different markets, you've got different settings here for Australia versus New Zealand. So you can modify those, and therefore you may get a recyclability result that's different for the two nations. But so be it.
Yeah.
You just know
but so if you would apply this to places which have big differences within the country, then you would need the input of organizations from that country to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why we the model
state of recycling. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's the model of having the host. So the host organization in each region, or they're the ones who've got the expertise on the ground to know what the settings should be for their particular jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And so then the host then manages the settings. And then if you've got different committees and so on set up in, let's say, Malaysia or Indonesia or Singapore, yes, you might over time trying to achieve some level of harmonization, but it won't be consistent. It's just
not across the country. Yeah.
No. So there might be some, for instance, that in all nations, a steel can is recyclable, an aluminium can is recyclable, a glass jar is recyclable. But
if it's collected,
if it's collected, that's right. But there's the best chance possible at least getting those ones. And then it might be that the PET bottles are recycled, provided they haven't got a label on it. The HDP might be. So you've got a sort of a base case of materials. And then once you go beyond that, that's where it becomes inconsistent, because then it might be trays and pots and tubs and but at least you can start with a base set of packaging items that everybody agrees on. Yes, there has to be collection, but at least if there is a collection, it would be acceptable because it's more easy to recycle.
But regarding consumer information, I mean, do you see it as if I'm living in a remote region in one of the countries which have a lesser developed recycling system or collection and recycling, if I live in the remote region, is it feasible to have the label differentiation within the country? Because the PET bottle, for example, in many places, it can be recycled. If I look at Indonesia, for example, but in many places, it's not actually collected. So
I'll
if I live in
I'll answer the question by going to this example to answer that question. All right. So this is the meat tray example. And what we did is I took off the liner. So I've no longer got the tray is no longer got a liner. So I've changed the design. There's no secondary materials. So now we're going to get a different result. It's now a recyclable tray. Now, to your question, let's just save this report for starters. And we'll have a report. Now, what I want to show you in the report is there's the collection levels can vary. So let's look down here. Actually, I'll show you on the Australian one. I'll just open a tray, final report. So in Australia, on the collection level, and it varies across the country as per your question. So down here, we've got thresholds for collection. I'll just open this up a bit. So what we say is, if more than 80% of the curbside population can has a collection system available to put item like a PET bottle in, then we call that widely accepted. Right? Yeah. If it's less than 60% of the curbside population can actually put something in, we say not accepted. That's not recyclable because it has failed on the collection side. Now, New Zealand have changed their numbers. They're using 80 and 50 because their settings are different. So into your example, you could have different territories within the same nation where you can modify the collection thresholds based on the territory.
Yeah, clear.
Now, the middle one, coming back to the question about the on-pack label, the middle one where it says less widely accepted, the on-pack label in that case says check locally.
Okay, yeah.
So it might not be everywhere. It mightn't be in your local authority or your territory.
Yeah.
And therefore the instruction would have to say check locally because it mightn't be everywhere. But if you are in a capital city, for instance, it'll be okay and you can put that in the recycling bin. So that's how we try and get around that variation to accommodate the fact that of course there's going to be differences across nations but we're trying to harmonise, as I say, I keep using the word harmonisation, but to drive this to the point where wherever there's a drop-off point, wherever there's a collection bin, can it accept these basic things?
Yeah.
Because that's a good start.
Yeah, clear. Yeah, clear. Thanks a lot for explaining.
That's okay. Well, that's pretty much the end of my demonstration. So really it's that was just to give you a sense of how it works.
Yeah. So we discussed before we will publish this and then we will follow up with a live discussion on Zoom. This is part 1 of the Tech Talk because part 2 will be with Mitch Hedlund of RecycleAcrossAmerica regarding standardized bin labels.
I look forward to seeing that too.
Yeah. So, but I think we will do the Zoom with you first for people who are interested to learn more about this topic.
Okay.
And then we will record the talk with Mitch afterwards. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
I really appreciate the opportunity, Nina. Good to catch up as always and have this chat.
Yeah, it's late at night in your place right now, I guess.
Not too late. That's okay. I'm a bit of a late bird. Much prefer the nights and the mornings.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right.
And see you later.
Okay. Thanks, Nina. Bye-bye.
Bye.